Hello, welcome to another edition of the Agile Uprising podcast. I'm Andy Cleff, and we're joined today by guests Nate Wixom and Torrey Powell. Nate's Director of Marketing Technology at Clearlink with over 18 years of experience on tech projects and initiatives. Welcome, Nate.
Thank you, Andy. Good to be here.
Torrey's Director of Software Engineering at Clearlink as well, with over 15 years of experience directing enterprise-level software development projects. Hello to you, sir.
Hello, Andy. Good to be here.
So both of you guys have been leading mob programming at Clearlink since January 2017, 18 months or so. And that experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly, will be the focus of our show. So let's have a quick recap of what mob programming is from your perspective. And also, I'll put in the show links a couple of podcast episodes we have from earlier this year with Woody Zuhl and one from 2017 with Llewellyn Falcon. But from your perspective, how would you summarize it?
Yeah, great question. So from our perspective, it's collaborative development with engineers where one engineer is the driver and then some other engineers are the navigators, and collectively they work on a project, which is opposed to each engineer individually working on separate projects.
Woody Zuhl and Llewellyn both have these great quotes that are a little less technical, but really, really fun. So Woody Zuhl says, mob programming is all the brilliant people working on the same thing at the same time in the same space on the same computer. Like, wow, that's pretty cool. It's the cognitive collective, as you described. And Llewellyn gave the only ground rule that I think everybody still observes as the only constraint. For an idea to go from somebody's head into the computer, it must go through someone else's hands on the keyboard. And that's the driver and navigator model that you talked about. Why did you guys, a year and a half ago, want to incorporate mob programming at Clearlink? How did you hear about it? What stimulated you to try it?
You know, it's kind of a funny story. It all happened kind of serendipitously. My team was working on a new product from the ground up, and we were gathered around a table, doing architecture discussions and meetings. And one of our software engineers just said, we ought to just get together and work on this together so we can make sure that we're all on the same page and we're doing this the right way. And so from there on out, we kind of worked on that project that way. And, and Nate, was working on something on his own. I'll let him kind of explain, but it kind of gelled and was kind of a perfect union there.
Yeah, on our side, we were having a difficult time with projects taking longer than we anticipated, and we were trying to figure out, how to better refine our process. And we brought in a consultant, and he kind of introduced us to mob programming. At the time, we thought it was a crazy idea, but we gave it a try, and it seemed to work. So that was the beginnings of something special for us, the collaborative mindset.
I think so many people respond to it when they first hear about it and they haven't tried it with that gut response. This just sounds crazy. It'll never work. I mean, 5 people, 7 people, whatever, doing the work of one, this is just a bad idea. How did you go about getting buy-in from whoever you needed to get buy-in, whether it was the team members themselves, company leaders, managers? Tell us about that.
As we started working on the product that I mentioned earlier, and we naturally started mob programming, maybe not with all of the rules and things that formally put in place by mob programming, but we're working collaboratively. And as we proceeded in doing that type of methodology, the company just naturally got comfortable with what we were doing and allowed us to move forward with kind of the experiment. And I found out that Nate had a proper name for it called mob programming, and so we kind of collaborated a little bit on how we could make this work at Clearlink, and that's when we discovered that there's the lone mob programming conference out in the Boston area. So we jumped on that opportunity and went to the mob programming conference and gained some valuable insights of how we could further progress mob programming here at ClearLink. And just over time, the executive levels at ClearLink are very gracious and opportunistic, I guess you could say, by allowing us to run with mob programming and learning from it and being able to provide that value add that I'm sure we'll get to here further on in the discussion.
So let's go back to that first conference at Boston. It was just the two of you. You thought it was a great idea, or you no longer thought at least it was a crazy idea. And you came back and you talked to the team and you said, what was the invitation that you put out there?
It's interesting because, when we first came back from the conference, we were already practicing a version of mob programming. And we came back with more suggested ways of doing mob programming. And the team members really embraced it. They were excited about it. They were interested to know that, this way of software engineering actually had a formal backing and there was a name to it. And so they were excited to kind of hit the ground running with it and kind of be part of a grassroots movement, so to speak, in mob programming.
Wow. So no resistance, no opposition. Everybody just jumped on. How about the non-programmers? Did you go all in, like everybody, the UI, the UX, the product people, the BAs in mobbing the way that Woody has described it as everybody's in the room. Everybody has a chance. Everybody's got 5 minutes on the keyboard, even if they've never used an IDE before.
Yeah, we really did. Like, we even have our mob spaces structured so that there's a couch and some other places for pretty much an open invitation for anyone, whether it's, like you said, UX developers, UX designers, stakeholders, product owners, front-end developers, back-end developers. It can sometimes be a big party there at our mob spaces because we have so many different people involved in the project.
What size did the experiment start at? Was it 3 people, 12 people? What was the frequency you tried and the rotation rates?
So on my group, we just had the one mob, which consisted of 4 engineers. Nate, I don't know what the state of yours was at the time.
Yeah, we had different groups of different sizes. Some were, as small as 2 or 3, and some were as big as 4 or 5. So it just kind of depended on the project and the requirements and the size of the effort.
And then it has gone on, and it's kind of increased, right? So because of the way we're doing software engineering collaboratively and the successes that we've seen, there's been a concerted effort to standardize all the software engineering at ClearLink onto mob programming. And so, we started out with, those 2 or 3 different mobs to begin with, but over the last 18 months, we're up to 10 or 11 now, different mobs with, anywhere from 3 to 5 people in them. Even outside of our department at ClearLink, there's been other departments that's interested in working in this fashion as well. So it's really interesting how it's taken off here.
What are those other departments doing? What functions?
They're an outreach team. So they do all of their work collaboratively and kind of trying to incorporate the mobbing principles in what they do as well.
So it's not just development teams. Cool. When you first started, what was the frequency? Did you do 2 hours a day, once a week, or was it all day, all week? And how did it change over time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we kind of jumped in head first, Andy, and said, let's just mob all day, every day. And what we found is that our engineers and developers just got exhausted. It was so mentally taxing for them. I remember them coming to me on Wednesday and saying, hey, Nate, like I can't even do this anymore. Like it feels like Friday, it's only Wednesday, you know, something's got to change. And so, even though we do, still do it all day, every day, we make sure to encourage the developers and engineers to take breaks if they need individual time to, go take a walk around the lake, whatever they need to do to kind of reset, because it is a different paradigm.
So, what do you think? What some of the causes of that feeling of on a Wednesday it feels like Friday? That intensity.
I think it's just like anything, like any sport. Maybe you're like training for a marathon. Your first run's just very difficult because you're not used to it. But with practice, you get used to it. You get used to the flow, the way of thinking, the collaboration. They just weren't used to like exercising those mental muscles and those social muscles that were required to do it. And so it just took time, and just as with anything, with practice it became easier and easier, and we kind of got in a cadence and flow of things.
One thing with mob programming as well is the developers are constantly engaged, right? So it's a nonstop engagement. And so without those breaks in action, like Nate was talking about, and without getting up and moving around every once in a while, it was mentally just taxing on them because developers that work kind of in a silo individual manner, they kind of get that brain fatigue, mental exhaustion. They can stop, check their email, surf the web for 5 minutes, and then jump back into programming. Well, in mom programming, that's not there. That doesn't exist. So it's just very engaging and can be fatiguing that way.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you guys came up with any good indicators for when individuals or a team needs a break. I know in some of Woody's recommendation, he's big on the law of 2 feet. When you need to leave, you leave. So it sounds like you allowed that. Did you come up with any other ways of indicating I, as an individual, am fatigued and need a break, so that it was clear to the team, or maybe the whole team needed a break? Did you come up with any agreements around that?
We were just very persistent in reminding them that, hey guys, you need to take breaks. It's
Yeah.
kind of backwards to the software engineering industry as far as that goes, but we really encouraged them to take frequent breaks. And now, after we've been doing this for a while, it's created a very good bonding experience for everyone involved with mob programming, because they'll say, hey, let's take a break, let's go play ping pong, or let's go for a walk, and they'll do those things as a group and kind of let their hair down, so to speak, and rejuvenate themselves for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, I love that. That collective experience with not only brain power, but big physical body movements like a good ping pong game is refreshing, and the social aspect. So I'm hearing nothing but benefits. Any downsides that you guys came across?
Yeah, that is a great question. We did so when we made the switch from developers working in silos individually to mob programming. There were a few, fortunately, not very many, but there were just a couple developers who said, hey, this is not my style. I'd rather work individually on a project. And so we allowed them to, obviously like explore other options because we felt like this was part of our future. But we did, have a few developers who wanted to go somewhere else because they didn't feel like that was a good fit for them.
And one other, kind of downside that we've experienced, and I'm sure Woody has mentioned this as well, it becomes a little bit more difficult to give out individual acknowledgement and accolades, and to be able to individually say to somebody, hey, you're doing a great job, And so we've tried to be creative in how we acknowledge, someone from going above and beyond. Because, when you're working at a collaborative way, the product of that mob is the team's product, the mob's product. And so, we're able to create different activities. We have different meetings where we have, kind of group call outs where their peers will acknowledge their successes and how well they're doing, and to be able to recognize individual achievements that way.
So as you make this switch in mindset from individual contributors to a collective, how did that impact your metrics gathering systems on team performance, sprint performance if you're sprinting, product performance?
So at first we were skeptical. It's the math doesn't seem to add up when you have 5 developers working on one project. How is that more efficient than 5 developers working on 5 different projects? But what we found was that, kind of like Woody said, when you have all the brilliant people working on the same thing at the same time, in the same space, on the same computer, you end up with much less bugs in your code. And what that means is that even though maybe you're not releasing products as frequently as if you had individual developers working on products, the products you do release, they're bug-free for the most part. And so what ends up happening is you don't have to put those products back into inventory for rework. You can launch them and move on to the next product and then launch that product. And that kind of backloaded efficiency adds up over time. And pretty soon you are working on a much faster cadence collectively than you would be individually.
Nice. In terms of onboarding new team members and knowledge sharing, what did you see?
As far as onboarding new engineers, and being a director and manager over them, I can't speak enough praise for mob programming. It makes onboarding people so much easier and more efficient. In the days of onboarding someone in a siloed manner, you'd take a certain amount of time for them to get their environment set up on their machines, and to be able to understand the business needs and requirements, and then you present them with a user story for their first task to work on, and you've got to explain all of that, and with mob programming, you onboard somebody, you put them into a mob, and immediately they're contributing, in the manner that they're capable of, whether that's technically or just an idea that of something that you're currently working on. That you don't have to train them on the whole background of what their position entails. The mob itself, trains that person naturally and without any slowdown to the mob. So it's been very, very efficient and effective to be able to onboard people.
So it sounds like it's wonderful to onboard new people and the rapid pace of knowledge sharing. I'm also curious, have you seen politics and ego come into play as you get the entire team collectively working towards the best designs? And if so, how have you been dealing with that?
Well, short answer is yes. We have seen politics in our teams and mobs. But fortunately, at ClearLink, we have been able to hire developers and employees that are able to keep their egos in check. We kind of have an unwritten rule of check your guns at the door, and our developers are able to do that for the most part, and kind of keep a cordial, positive, collaborative atmosphere as they work together in their mobs and their teams.
I think one of the beauties that the rapid rotation of mobbing offers is that sense of collaboration where you can quickly try multiple ideas and let the best designs emerge as long as people aren't too tightly attached to their opinion.
You're exactly right. When you practice mob programming as it's intended, when you have a driver and navigators, and you're switching that on a regular cadence, it allows everyone from the most seasoned senior developer down to the most green junior intern to participate and share their knowledge and ideas. So it truly is a team effort, by all parties involved.
So what's next with mob programming? What experiments do you have planned? What's the good you want to turn up? Is there any bad that you want to dampen? How do you keep it going? How do you make it sustainable?
There's a few things that we're trying to work through and refine and perfect. We have one instance where we have one mob that has a remote member in it, and that's brought up some interesting circumstances in order to collaborate well and to be able to include him properly into the mob and to make sure that he gets his perspectives heard and whatnot. But I think it would be, what's next at ClearLink, I think it'd be interesting to see if we can't more fully, incorporate remote workers and to be able to allow more flexibility in the mobs. One thing at ClearLink, as we do move forward and integrate more teams into mob programming, we really want to be able to create the best customer experience that we can for all of our stakeholders, for all of our customers, and we feel that mob programming is the way to do that through collaboration, and not just collaboration among our software engineers, but also among stakeholders, user experience people, those that are in charge of that part of the business, to be able to open up that line of communication properly, so we can provide the customer experience that we are expected to provide here at ClearLink.
So you mentioned incorporating remote team members. How are you going about that experiment? What's it look like?
Sure. Yeah. We've kind of explored how others are doing it. There are certain other companies that are doing everybody remotely and being able to do it efficiently and using collaboration tools like Zoom and things like that to be able to bring people all together in one room and to be able to share desktops and things like that. So, there's a lot of different ideas as far as, positioning the person that's remotely on the screen so that you feel like they're part of the group, and some psychological things like that we're playing with, but just to make sure that there's so many valuable conversations that happen just in the hallways at work, and with the remote atmosphere we feel like a lot of those are missed out on. So we're trying to come up with ways to have those ad hoc conversations with those remote individuals as well.
So we had Lisette Sutherland on the show earlier in the year. I think it was February. I'll put a link in the show notes. And she's been doing remote teaming for a while and has a wonderful set of tools and ideas and collaboration practices that give some of that serendipity that happens when everybody's co-located physically, but makes it possible remotely. Be fun to do a mashup with some of that and some of the mobbing. All right, so here you are, 18 months on the other side. If you could offer advice, or if you could have a go back in time machine and start fresh, what would it look like? What would be some of the potholes that you bounced through that you would point out to other people that haven't yet started or are just embarking on their mob adventures? Where to start, what to avoid, what sort of barriers to be mindful of? What do you got?
Yeah, I think one thing that comes to mind right away, Andy, is patience to a large degree. Like I mentioned before, you may not see results immediately. In fact, you probably won't. It will be when you're months into it that you'll really start to see things move forward rapidly. So fortunately here at ClearLink, we have upper management that is flexible and willing to give us that autonomy. I'd imagine there are other organizations that are not so fortunate, but that's a big part of it, is having that patience to let it play out and really giving it some elbow grease as far as a lengthy experiment to see end results.
Yeah, and I would kind of add on to that as well, as far as, as we've combined teams and brought more individuals into the mob programming scene. When they first hear about it, there's obviously some skepticism about doing mob programming. Some advice is just give it a shot, because those that have been skeptical, they've been willing and open to trying it out. And once they do it, they love it. They love the collaboration. They love the added social dynamics to mob programming. And they really enjoy the fact that they're continually learning from their peers and furthering their career progression naturally, and being able to increase their knowledge base.
Nice. Well, gentlemen, Nate and Torrey, it's been great talking to you. We're coming up on the end of our time box. I'm going to give you a chance to share any upcoming events, give some shout outs, give us a quick summary of more about what ClearLink does.
Thank you, first of all, for having us and spending some time today. We at ClearLink, we provide intelligent marketing, sales, and data science solutions for the world's leading brands. You can find us at clearlink.com.
Yeah, and I would just encourage anyone out there that has any questions or would like to follow up more about our experience with mob programming, please get a hold of us. We'll be more than willing to accommodate any questions or inquiries that way.
Great. I'll make sure we get contact information, both your emails. Do you guys do any programming workshops out at your place? Have you opened it up for outsiders come and see and play?
We do have some coding workshops in specific technologies that we use. Here in the near future, we are planning on doing a mob programming workshop, and we'll have more information on that coming shortly, and maybe we can provide that for you so you can post that as well.
Oh, that'd be great. It's always fun to go and see how other people are doing it, both to grab new ideas, but to walk away with the inspiration that, yes, in fact, this can work. This crazy idea might just work here. Well, to both of you, Nate Wixom and Torrey Powell, I want to say thanks, and also to our listening audience. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a review, a rating, leave some comments on iTunes. Really helps other people find us. If this is your first time tuning in, subscribe. You'll catch the next podcast. And if you want to join the discussion, share your stories, your experiences, good, bad, and the ugly about mobbing, join us at coalition.agileuprising.com. Till next time, this is the Agile Uprising Podcast, signing out.